Cox. The time has expired. We move to question time. I call Senator Cash.
President, and my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Last July, the Prime Minister stood before Australians and said that inflation had turned the corner. The reality for Australians is inflation is now rising again, prices are higher, and families are facing the real risk of interest rates staying higher for longer. Will the Prime Minister apologise to Australians for stating that inflation had turned the corner when the evidence now shows inflation is increasing again under his government's policies?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. It is the case that inflation is higher after those last inflation figures than we would like, but it is also the case that those inflation figures remain much lower than those that our government inherited when we came to power. And when we came to office, I would remind those opposite, I don't recall Senator Cash apologising for 6.1% inflation. I don't.
Order. I do need to be able to hear Senator Wong. Order. Minister Wong, please continue.
As I said, when we came to office, inflation was at 6.1%, and as importantly, Senator Dowling knows this, it was rising. It is now much lower than that, and we know Australians are under pressure, which is why easing cost of living pressures has been this government's #1 priority since coming into government. Rolling out cheaper medicines, more bulk billing, student debt relief, backing higher wages and more tax cuts from the 1st of July. Now, what is interesting about that list, and we can talk a bit more about this, and I hope Senator Cash might return to this issue in her next question, because I think what is interesting is that so many of the things that this government has done to try and deal with cost of living relief have been opposed by Senator Cash and the Liberal Party and the National Party. What is interesting is they come in here, loudly interject, talk about cost of living, meanwhile voting to oppose cost of living measures that this government is seeking to roll out for the Australian people. So I think everybody understands which party of government is A party of government, and B, a party that is focused on what matters to Australians.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Cash, first supplementary.
So no apology to the Australian people, even though on a daily basis they're living with your reality of your policies, rising costs in their weekly bills and at the checkout. Why can't the Prime Minister simply admit he got it wrong? Inflation hasn't turned the corner, and Australians are now paying higher prices, higher inflationary pressure, and are now at greater risk to the household budgets.
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Well, I again make this point. We have a growing economy. We have inflation that is much lower than that which we inherited and well below its peak. We have wages which are growing at the fastest pace since 2012 and the lowest average unemployment of any government in the last 50 years. We have the smallest gender gap on record. We have record number of small businesses. We have solid business investment and record investment in public hospitals and, importantly, tax cuts for every taxpayer. 2 more grounds to come this year and next, and we have rolled out cost of living support, energy bill relief, cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines, 3 days early education, free TAFE, largest increase in rent assistance, student debt relief for 3 million, more bulk billing, free health advice through 1800 Medicare and 5% deposits, helping 16,000 first-home buyers.
Thank you. Order. Senator Watt and Senator Ruston. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, do you still agree, or do you agree with the Prime Minister's statement that inflation had turned the corner? And if you do, on what basis, when inflation is now increasing again and Australian families are bracing for more cost of living pain?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
I absolutely agree with the Prime Minister, and that evidence is in what I have just outlined, which is the comparison between inflation today and what we have seen over many years towards the end of your government. But I do want to make this point. We see the coalition again. Well, I'm so sorry. You're the Liberal Party. I apologise. Forget that you're not the coalition. No coalition. Thank you. I'll take the interjection. We see the Liberal Party, the once proud economic managers in this country, unable to articulate a clear economic agenda, unable to prosecute any alternative policy because they are entirely focused on their own internal divisions. What an indictment of a party that used to pride itself on its economic management. They are nowhere when it comes to the economy.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Polley.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister. Australians rightly want their government focused on the things that matter to them, like tackling the cost of living pressures, strengthening Medicare and making childcare more accessible. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitments to the Australian people?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Wong.
Thank you to Senator Polley. Well, Australians want a government focused on what matters, and that is what we have continued to deliver in 2026. Cost of living relief, quality, affordable health care, support for families, and of course we saw last Friday National Cabinet met in Sydney and reached a landmark agreement to strengthen public hospitals. The government will provide an additional $25 billion for state and territory public hospitals, 3 times more additional funding than under the last 5-year agreement. An investment that strengthens Medicare, builds on what we are already delivering, in particular Medicare urgent care clinics, stronger bulk billing incentives, more Medicare mental health clinics and cheaper medicines for every Australian. This is a government that is easing cost of living pressures. From this month, medicines on the PBS cost no more than $25. Australians can access free health advice through 1800 Medicare. From January 5th, every child that needs it has access to 3 days of childcare subsidy, no activity test. So what that demonstrates is that this government, since 1 January 2026, is continuing to deliver for Australians with support at home and also with advocacy in the world. The Prime Minister travelled to Timor-Leste last week, agreed the Passeria Declaration, the first of its kind between our two nations, and this week I will travel with the Prime Minister to Indonesia, where he will sign the historic Treaty on Common Security agreed with President Prabowo at the end of last year. This is a Labor government that is focused on delivering in Australia's national interest, focused on the things Australians want us to focus on. And it stands in stark contrast with those opposite who continue to focus almost entirely on what is happening in their party room and on their phone.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Polley, first supplementary.
Ministers, families around Australia have been focused in recent weeks on getting their kids back to school for another year. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on the commitment to Australian kids to give them the best education they deserve?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator Polley and all of those of us on this side of the parliament have been focused on delivering better education for Australians for all of our time in the parliament. This is a Labor project over generations to lift the educational opportunities of all Australians. We believe every kid deserves a great education, and that is what we are delivering. For the first time, we are fully funding public schools. For the first time, we are fully funding public schools, and it's a Labor government, Senator, that has delivered it. A Labor government has delivered it through the Better and Fairer Schools Agreement. It is the biggest new investment in public schools by the Australian government ever, $16.5 billion over 10 years. $16.5 billion over 10 years. But we recognise funding is not enough, which is why investment that is tied to real reforms that help children catch up,
Thank you, Minister.
keep up
the time
and finish
for
school.
answering has expired. Senator Polley, second supplementary.
Yes, President. Why is it important for the Albanese Labor government to deliver for the Australian people? And what might stand in the way of the good government delivering the outcomes that Australians deserve?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Wong.
Good government requires focus on the things that matter to Australians, the things Australians care about. It requires a focus on that, not on ourselves, and that is what we are doing. That is what Albanese Labor are doing. What, of course, stands in the way is division, and nowhere is that clearer than in the Liberal and National parties, because the coalition, as Senator Cash poignantly reminded me today, is no more. Right. They've split again. And yet the infighting rages on. We see the blokes lining up to replace Ms Lee. We see the far right and the even further right, battling for control. On issue after issue, they drift further to the extremes. This is the politics of grievance in a party of government, chasing one nation, where you can't be more one nation than one nation. In contrast, we are delivering for Australians on the things they care about.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McGrath.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Families in regional Australia are being hit hardest by Labor's cost of living crisis, paying more for fuel, groceries, insurance, energy and transport, while having fewer services and lower incomes to absorb the blow.
Order.
Why has the Prime Minister persisted with cost of living and energy policies that compound price pressures for regional and rural Australians who have the least capacity to absorb them?
Order. Senators Eyre and Watt. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator, I do welcome a question from you.
Senator Watt. Oh, sorry, Senator Wong. Senators Ayres and Watt and whoever else was on this side interjecting. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, I do welcome a question on regional policy from a Queensland Liberal, and I noticed the silence at the other end of the chamber, so I'm hoping that Senator McKenzie will remedy that at some point on regional policy. But that is where we part company, Senator, because I disagree with the proposition in your question. What I would say to you first is let's recall that it is this government that has supported a pay rise for all minimum and award wage workers. That takes the total increase to under Labor to over $9,000. Now, you would be aware, I'm sure, Senator, the extent to which there are minimum wage workers in regional Australia. They will benefit and will benefit from that. Superannuation guarantee has increased to 12%. We have bonuses for housing apprentices. We have paid pracs for nursing, teaching, social work and midwifery students. And, of course, we have boosts to Medicare. And I'm sure you know the extent to which health is an issue in regional Australia, the challenges that so many country towns have in accessing health services. Well, it is a Labor government, not a Liberal government, not the National Party, that is delivering health services into regional Australia. That is the reality. What I would also say is when it comes to energy policy, what is meant why there is upward pressure on energy prices is the division and dysfunction that your side of politics engaged in over a decade. And I would remind you, we're going back to the 2000s, where, of course, the National Party also split from the Liberal Party on energy policy. We are cleaning up the mess. We are bringing renewables into the system.
The time for answering has expired. Senator McGrath, first supplementary.
In regional communities, higher fuel prices and freight costs flow directly into higher grocery prices and business costs.
Senator Watt.
Why has the Prime Minister failed to deliver relief for regional Australians facing higher everyday prices because of freight and fuel costs?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator, you would be aware that this government has continued to invest in services for regional Australia, in services for all Australians, has continued to advocate for wage increases, has helped deliver wage increases, including in the care economy, which have benefited Australians across this country. When it comes to energy policy, I would also make this point. We know that what happened when you were in government is capacity exited the system, and we know that many coal-fired power stations flagged that they were going to retire, and you did nothing about this. Now, we are engaged in a transition. We know it is tough. We know what it has meant in terms of prices, but we are dealing with shifting from a grid and an energy system which was declining to a clean energy, more reliable system for the future.
Senator McGrath, second supplementary.
Regional households are facing rising insurance premiums, unreliable energy supply and limited access to services. What does the Prime Minister say to regional families who are paying more for insurance and energy, waiting longer for essential services and being told to hang on when his government's policies are making everyday life harder, not easier?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Who's this question really to?
I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure where to start on that, because there's so much in that we disagree with. But let's start first with services. We have delivered 48 urgent care clinics into regional, rural and remote areas. We have delivered more than 2.5 million bulk billed appointments in regional and rural areas, and we are reducing HECS for doctors and nurses that work in our regions. So all of that means Labor, not Liberal, not National, are doing more to deliver health services in regional Australia. We are investing more money in childcare centres, often in regional Australia, in childcare deserts, the areas where there's a lack of supply, which are often regional Australia. 37,000 regional Australians are being assisted through the Regional First Home Buyers Guarantee. 450,000 households in rural and remote regions are being assisted through the increase in the maximum rent assistance by 45%. The government stepped in to keep REX operational. These are amongst many things that the government is doing for regional Australia.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong. Minister, late last year you told the Australian Institute for International Affairs that Australia will always make our contribution as part of multilateral efforts to protect civilians and uphold international law, because living in peace shouldn't be contingent on where you were born. Yet you are now rolling out the red carpet for Isaac Herzog, the President of Israel, a state committing genocide that has killed at least 70,000 Palestinians, including thousands of children, journalists, aid workers and health workers, and a man who the UN Commission of Inquiry says incited genocide. Why are you inviting war criminals to this country, and will you rescind your divisive invitation to President Herzog, something members of your own party have called for?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Put simply, President Herzog is coming to Australia to honour the victims of the anti-Semitic terror attack at Bondi and to provide support to the Australian Jewish community, and it's a visit that comes at a moment of great trauma for many in the Jewish Australian community.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Minister, you have refused to join the UK, Canada and France in condemning the Israeli government's demolition of UNRWA headquarters in East Jerusalem. You have remained silent as Israel bans Doctors Without Borders from Gaza. Under your watch, we have become a country that has made a mockery of international law. Can you explain how anyone can take your government seriously on human rights ever again?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Well, thank you. The Greens political party have for more than 2 years spread misinformation about Australia's position and actions. The Australian government did in fact issue a statement objecting to Israel's actions. We did so at the UN Security Council on the 28th of January. I note that the Greens political party have ignored this, just as they have ignored all statements that we have made with partners calling for unimpeded humanitarian aid. So, the Greens political party seeks to provoke anger by saying statements are words, then they try to provoke anger by saying that there aren't enough statements. I think everyone understands the approach that is being taken.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Minister, tens of thousands and likely hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been killed, over 500 since that farce of a ceasefire. These actions are by a country you continue to call friend, trade weapons with, and invite their president here. Minister, have you stopped pretending to care at all? Will you be next rolling out the welcome mat for Putin?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
I'm not sure that is actually worthy of an answer.
Senator Grogan.
My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. The OECD's latest report provides a powerful endorsement of Australia's economic position, highlighting the Albanese Labor government's economic and fiscal strategy that delivered a soft landing while avoiding a recession and keeping more Australians in jobs. How has the government's responsible budget management allowed the government to manage pressures at the same time as providing cost-of-living relief for Australians?
Good question.
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Grogan for the question and for being a part of a united team that's determined to deliver for the Australian people, a sharp contrast with what we see happening over the other side of the chamber. And as Senator Grogan says, the OECD's latest report does provide some commentary on how successful the Albanese government has been in navigating some of the economic pressures that we've been seeing around the world. And in fact, I can see Senator Hume interjecting here, and I'm happy to read out the quotes, and there are a number of them, from the OECD about how Australia was able to achieve a soft landing, that we've managed to avoid a recession. Presumably you're all pretty pleased about
Senator
that
Hume.
over there. That it was supported. This is a favourite for Senator Hume. Supported by prudent fiscal policy. Prudent fiscal policy. That we were able to provide cost-of-living supports to households, and in the absence of this impetus, Australians may well have experienced a recession during 23-24, showing that the decisions that we took at those critical moments to support the economy have been so important. The economy is growing, wages are up, pay packets are growing at fastest pace since 2012. We've got a very low unemployment rate at 4.1%. We've managed to create 1.2 million jobs, 3 out of 5 full-time, 4 out of 5 in the private sector, the smallest gender pay gap on record, record number of small business, solid business investment. We've managed all of that and been able to invest in those key services like hospitals that Senator Wong just took us through, and provided tax cuts, with more tax cuts coming for every taxpayer.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Grogan, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. That's a lot of very good news. If I could now ask about MyEFO, the Albanese Labor government identified a further $20 billion in savings, bringing the total savings and reprioritisation since coming to government to $114 billion. How has this approach allowed government to invest in cost-of-living relief to assist Australian households?
Good question.
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Grogan again for that question, because finding savings across our budget has been an important part of our fiscal strategy. And in MyEFO, we did find another $20 billion. Now, compared to when we came to government, the budget position has improved by more than $233 billion over the 7 years. Debt is $176 billion lower in 25-26, and we have saved $60 billion in interest costs on that Liberal debt that we inherited. We've managed to deal with lowering real payments growth, and those savings have allowed us to reprioritise, to repair the budget, to pay down debt, but importantly to build up those services that those opposite spent their entire time in government tearing down,
Senator
like
McKenzie.
hospitals, like Medicare, like investment in early education and care, like investment in schools, all of the services that the people of Australia rely upon.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Grogan, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. The Albanese Labor government knows how important quality hospital care is for Australians. Last week, I know I was delighted to see the Prime Minister reach agreement with the states and territories on additional funding for the nation's public hospital system. How has responsible budget management supported important investments in hospitals and in Medicare to ensure Australians can get the health care when and where they need it?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Grogan for the question. And I think all Australians acknowledge that healthcare and access to healthcare and affordable healthcare is a #1 priority for all of us. And it has been a focus for the Albanese government. And it is a key part of our ability to provide additional cost of living support whilst we deal with the inflation challenge across the economy. So investments in urgent care clinics, investments in Medicare, tripling the bulk billing rate, and we're already seeing the good and positive data coming out of that, with more and more Australians being able to access bulk billing. But hospitals are an important part too, and we've reached agreement with the states and territories, provided that additional investment and been able to fund that within making sensible provisions for an agreement like that within MyEFO. And it's because of the approach we've taken to find savings, to reduce waste, to pay down debt, to deliver surpluses, to lower the deficits, has allowed us to make these important investments.
Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Veterans Affairs. The Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide found serious issues with the quality, timelessness and effectiveness of healthcare provided to our veterans. And an analysis of over 400 veteran suicides done for the Commissioners identified, and I quote, a lack of timely access, end quote, to mental and physical health services and disparity in medical fees as a core problem. They also pointed to Defence's complex accounting system, ill-defined authority and a lack of accountability. Can the Minister please give me clear examples of what the government has put in place to address the mental health issue of suicide for Australian veterans?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McAllister.
Thank you very much, President. And Senator Lambie, I thank you for the question and also for alerting my office of your interest in this policy area. You're right that the Royal Commission told us a great deal about what veterans required and the shortcomings and the experience veterans had had in their period post-service, and we are determined to act on it. The Royal Commission had a particular focus on the broader wellbeing of defence personnel, veterans and families, and it was really aimed at preventing harm and supporting early intervention. And the government's approach really reflects that. We have shifted our focus to that lifetime wellbeing accordingly. Some of the concrete actions include, of course, the establishment of the Defence and Veterans Service Commission, and a wellbeing agency will be up and running this year. And we've also released a Defence and Veteran mental health and wellbeing strategy. Critically, in the 25-26 MyEFO, the government provided $58.3 million over 3 years to strengthen mental health support for veterans across the continuum of care. That includes expanded access to mental health treatment plans and to provide proactive, continuous and connected care for veterans experiencing mental health conditions. And those new arrangements will commence from the 1st of July 2026. As part of the 25-26 budget, the last budget, we also extended the military and veteran psychiatry training program. That provides psychiatry registrar training placements in military and veteran mental health. And that initiative seeks to improve access to psychiatrists who have specialist training in veteran and trauma-focused care. It's also important that we've worked to speed up processing times for claims. What that means, as you, I'm sure, understand, is that support can flow to veterans faster, and we're working to improve that because we know that that, in turn, has an impact on veterans' mental health.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie, first supplementary.
Well, thank you for that, because I spent most of my Christmas break finding beds in psych wards for veterans in extreme mental distress. That tells me the department is failing miserably. Can the Minister tell me exactly how many psychiatric beds are available across the country right now, and on average how long it is taking to get a bed? Because I know.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. So the Department of Veterans Affairs works with the hospitals across the nation to make sure that appropriate mental health beds are funded and available for veterans when they need them. We are conscious of how challenging this is, Senator Lambie, and so in addition to that, we're working to expand innovative mental health programs that are in the community, which takes some of the pressure off those inpatient admissions. We're also working to improve availability of appropriate training and therefore care for veterans through the Military and Veteran Psychiatry Training Program, which I referenced in my answer to your primary question, and that, of course, provides those placements that skill up medical personnel in military and veteran mental health. I did want to remind people that if you are seeking mental health support, a possible contact is to go through Open Arms, which is 1800 011 046.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie, second supplementary.
Thank you. The Department of Veterans Affairs has apparently given contracts to providers of psychiatric care. I know there are two providers. MCOA is one of them. The other appears to be a national secret for God knows what reason. I want to know the name of the other provider, and I want to know why these providers' fees are as much as double or triple the amount of any other provider out there.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McGrath. Minister McAllister, sorry. Just promoted you, Senator McGrath.
Thanks very much, President.
Order.
Senator Lambie, it's a serious question, notwithstanding the interjections. Yes, thank you, Senator Walsh. Senator Lambie, I'll have to come back to you on the second contractor. I don't have that information with me. But I will say that we do seek to improve access to healthcare services. That includes the information I provided earlier about the $58.3 million over 3 years to strengthen mental health support for veterans across the continuum of care. I also understand that the Department for Veterans Affairs is updating a fee schedule for report writing. This has been an area of difficulty for many people to ensure that payments for reports are more consistent with other equivalent jurisdictions and better reflect actual costs to practitioners.
Thank you, Minister. Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, I think is Minister Gallagher. Minister, you would have seen analysis released by ACOS, finding that the federal government is spending more on tax breaks for property investors than on social housing, homelessness services and rent assistance combined. Will you commit to sensible reforms to property tax concessions in the upcoming federal budget that would limit the number of investment properties that can be negatively geared and use the capital gains tax discount to actually incentivise new supply?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I can confirm I do represent the Treasurer in this chamber. Our tax and housing policies haven't changed, and I would say, Senator Bragg, you've opposed and voted against all of the housing measures that we have brought to this chamber to improve housing affordability and access to housing for Australians, so you have no credibility on housing or housing policy at all. As Senator Pocock's question relates to analysis that ACOS have done, obviously the government works closely with ACOS across a number of portfolios. I engage with ACOS as well, and we will always work with organisations, particularly when their focus is on driving fairness across the Australian economy. We've done a number of things to improve housing affordability and access to housing and housing security since coming to government, including back-to-back increases in rent assistance. We've also built 5,000 social and affordable homes. There's another 25,000 in planning or construction. Under the Housing Australia Future Fund, we've got more housing being announced right around the country. I can see the Minister for Housing is constantly on housing sites or working with housing providers. But we, as I said at the beginning, our policies in relation to this haven't changed. We remain focused on delivering the commitments we took to the last election, which was to build and drive supply of housing across the country as a way of improving affordability and access to housing for all Australians.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
President, thank you, Minister. Minister, the ACT is the only jurisdiction not to have a dedicated youth homelessness shelter. In 2024-25, 392 young Canberrans came to homelessness services in need of long-term housing, and only 28 were provided with housing. How can the government afford to subsidise someone's 7th investment property but can't afford to house a 15-year-old with nowhere else safe to go?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, the Commonwealth's responsibility through the Housing and Homelessness Agreement is to provide funding for services that are funded and managed through the ACT government, and we have well.
Order.
For a government that, when you were in government, Senator Ruston, did nothing at all on housing, whether it be social housing, homelessness funding, building housing, whatever, had nothing to do with the government. That had nothing to do with the government.
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Order. I remind those on my left that this is Senator Pocock's question, and your interjections are disorderly and disrespectful. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. And so when we have come to the housing issue, we have looked at every part of the housing spectrum. Our investment is 20 times what the previous government spent over an entire decade. So actually, listen to that, Senator Ruston. When you built 373 social and affordable homes in 9 years, we are on target for 55,000.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock. Second supplementary.
Mr. President, thank you, Minister. Minister, I commend the government's investments in housing and note your reference to the Housing Australia Future Fund. But the fact remains that due to the low rate of youth allowance, young people are being excluded from the new social housing being provided under the Housing Australia Future Fund. To the broader question about our system that is subsidising the 1% of Australians who own 25% of investment properties while not ensuring young people can have access to social housing, how can your government think that that is an acceptable status quo?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Gallagher.
Well, we are investing in social housing. That's what we're doing. We are looking at every single way we can make housing more affordable and more accessible, whether you're someone who is homeless all the way to home ownership. If you look at every intervention we are making across the board, through Housing Australia Future Fund is one aspect of that. The social and affordable homes that we're building with the states and territories are another. The access to 5% deposits is another way of doing it. Working with the housing sector is another way of doing it. And those opposite have no credibility on this. You can interject as much as you like, but the reality is you didn't have a housing minister, you didn't work with the states and territories, you didn't invest in housing. Just over 300 houses
Minister
in
Gallagher,
9 years.
Resume your seat. Minister Wong.
Could you call Senator Bragg to order, please?
I have called Senator Bragg to order. I've reminded the opposition that this was Senator Pocock's question. And Senator Bragg, perhaps in the 8 seconds that are left, you could just be quiet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. And we look forward to working with any senator who's genuinely interested in the housing issue to continue to improve affordability and access to housing in this country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell.
My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Under Labor, homes are more expensive and harder to find, yet foreign owners are allowed to dodge the vacancy rules and keep thousands of ghost homes off-market while Australians struggle to find a home for their families. Documents obtained by One Nation under Freedom of Information expose Labor's failure to enforce foreign home ownership rules. According to the government records, there are at least 50,000 foreign-owned ghost homes across Australia. And worse still, the Treasurer has admitted in writing that foreign owners are evading the rules, with 83% or more not lodging compulsory vacancy reports with the ATO. Minister, Why has the Albanese Labor government allowed thousands of foreign-owned ghost homes to go unpoliced, unpunished, in the middle of a housing crisis while Australian families suffer?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Senator Bell. We have actually banned foreign buyers from buying existing homes, and we have a number of other responses in relation to immigration and ownership of housing, or foreign ownership of housing, that the relevant ministers are managing right now. So I'm not sure the data that you're referring to there. Every time this issue is raised at estimates, and it has been raised by Senator Roberts and others, the explanation and advice, the evidence from Treasury is this is something that they watch carefully and closely, and there are, as you say, rules around it, and that it forms a very, very small part of the overall home ownership arrangements in this country. So I can't verify the data or the information that you've used in your question, but my advice is foreign investors make up 0.8% of new and established dwelling purchase transactions in the last data that I have, which is in the 23-24 year, which, if you look in numbers, that is just over 4,000 transactions out of a total of 538,861 transactions. That is advice from the ATO. If there is anything further I can provide in relation to the substance of your question, I will endeavour to do so.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell, first supplementary.
That's all right. Happy to also assist in providing some correspondence between Senator Hanson and the Treasurer in relation to this. So, Minister, I'll just say, and look, off these figures, there are up to $8 billion in potential fines that have not been prosecuted by the Albanese Labor government on this topic. Minister, can you advise the Senate, again, how many homes in Australia are owned by foreigners? And in the last financial year, and given the Treasurer now admits foreign owners are evading vacancy rules, will the Minister advise the Senate
Senator
how
Bell,
many
the
fines—
time for asking your question has expired. Senator Ayres. That was seriously rude. Minister Gallagher. Order. Order. The chamber has obviously not heard that I did call the minister to answer, but there's so much chatter across the chamber you didn't hear, and therefore you continue to interject. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, of course, there are rules around foreign investment in residential property, and the government expects those rules to be followed and enforced. And as I said, based on the data, the latest data that I have, foreign investors account for approximately 0.8% of property transactions of new and established dwelling purchases in Australia, and that total foreign investment in residential real estate has significantly dropped since its peak in 2015-16. That in 23-24, the ATO's residential real estate compliance investigations identified 688 cases for investigations, completed 602, and found 141 properties were in breach, and 66 of these resulted in divestment.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell, second supplementary.
Minister, Australians need more housing, but Labor's weak enforcement protection protects thousands of these foreign-owned ghost homes instead of Australian families. Will Labor put all Australians first and adopt One Nation's permanent ban on foreign purchases of Australian homes, not just new homes, or will you keep propping up a loophole-ridden system that locks Australian families out of home ownership?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senate President. And I don't want to start my answer with a question, but I would put a similar question to One Nation, which is, would you support all of the housing investments that we've brought to this chamber to actually drive housing supply so that the people you represent whether the Housing Australia Future Fund, the social and affordable housing, the rent assistance, any of that.
Order.
Every single measure that we have brought to this chamber to get support for driving an increase in housing supply, which is the single best thing we can do to increase access and affordable housing in this country, my memory is One Nation has voted against it. So in relation to foreign investment, we have tightened the rules. There is compliance action underway. It forms a very small part of the residential housing market, 0.8%. Senator Bell, we could do a lot more together if you voted for some of the measures that we've brought
Sheldon.
here.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. It's been more than 3 years since the government's Secure Jobs, Better Pay reforms passed the parliament. How much have wages risen since these reforms have came into effect, and how's helping everyday Australians with the cost of living challenges?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Sheldon. As Senator Sheldon well knows, the Albanese Labor government is focused on delivering on our commitments and delivering real cost of living relief for Australians, delivering better pay and conditions for workers around the country, because that is a key part of supporting Australians with cost of living pressures. The Secure Jobs Better Pay Act was passed by the Albanese Labor government in December 2022 to improve wages, reinvigorate enterprise bargaining, address the gender pay gap and improve job security. And now, as a result of these reforms, workers covered by enterprise agreements are enjoying the strongest wages growth in the nation. The latest Employee Earnings and Hours survey shows workers on enterprise agreements earned an average of $1,746.10 per week in May 2025, and that's $153.30 more than in 2023 before that legislation passed. This 9.6% rise is the biggest increase across all methods of settling pay. More than 4.5 million people now have their pay set through enterprise agreements, highlighting their importance in Australia's wage-setting system and the effectiveness of Labor's Secure Jobs Better Pay Act reforms. These figures show the Same Job, Same Pay reforms are delivering not only for all Australian workers but also specifically for working women. Women on enterprise agreements earned an average of $1,542.30 per week, 12.4% more than the average across all methods of setting pay for women. This reflects the role that good faith bargaining plays in supporting better pay and financial security for women across the workforce. This data clearly shows the Albanese government's reforms are helping workers on enterprise agreements experience the strongest wage growth across all forms of setting pay, and it shows the Albanese government has got wages moving again to help Australians with their cost of living pressures.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. That's making real difference. Minister, wage increases are a top priority for the Albanese Labor government to support Australian families. How important is it that wages continue to keep pace with rising costs, and what would it be at risk if wages were cut?
Minister Watt.
Thanks again, Senator Sheldon. It is absolutely vital that Australians' wages continue to rise, particularly for low and middle-income earners. Lifting wages is a key part of our government's laser-like focus to reduce the impacts of cost of living pressures. But at every stage, we've seen the Liberal Party oppose any measure we've put forward to increase the wages of working Australians. They voted against our reforms in the last term, and current Leader of the Opposition, Ms Lee, has said she absolutely wants to start a new battle with us over industrial relations. Now, we know Ms Lee is certainly fighting many battles on many fronts at the moment, and that's just within her own party room. We saw that on display last week when her own shadow ministers were caught on film in their own boys' own adventure, plotting against Susan Lee's leadership, mere hours after Senator Patterson had rung into radio to back in Ms Lee on radio. There he was with Senator Duniam, Senator O'Sullivan, plotting to dump the first woman leader of the Liberal Party. If you don't support the leader, you stand aside.
Thank you,
Ted's
Senator
words,
Watt.
not mine.
Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
While it's vital that Australian workers are being paid what they deserve for their days at work, it's even more vital that they have a job in the first place. Minister, can you outline how many more Australians are in work now under the Albanese government's and why the dignity of having a job is so important.
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Sheldon. There are currently more than 14.6 million Australians in work, which is a record number of Australians in work, with unemployment falling to 4.1%. And while the Albanese government is focused on the jobs of Australians, we know that the only jobs the Liberal Party is focused on are their own. Today we read about the current opposition leader's pitch to the Nationals to get back together. And the key condition is that the—
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Scarr.
Direct relevance. There's absolutely no relevance. I'm sure Senator Sheldon must be very disappointed the minister isn't being directly relevant.
You don't stand up and have a debate. Minister Watt, I will direct you back to Senator Sheldon's question.
Yep.
Yes.
And the key condition of the jobs deal for the 3 rogue senators is that they be benched off the front bench for 6 months after breaking shadow cabinet solidarity. I was thinking to myself, when is another example where we've seen 3 people sidelined for breaking the rules of the game? And there it was, Sandpapergate, that infamous time when we saw 3 of Australia's top cricketers sidelined for months after being banned for ball tampering. And now we see in here Senator McKenzie as the new Steve Smith, the leader who should really know better, Senator McDonald, David Warner urging them into a scrap, and poor old Senator Cadell, Cameron Bancroft, the new guy who should have been led astray. You are focused on your jobs. We're focused.
Senator Patterson.
Thanks.
Order. 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 Senator Patterson is on his feet. Order. Senator Watt. Senator Watt. Senator Patterson will ask his question in silence.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, this afternoon the Reserve Bank Board increased interest rates by 25 basis points. How much will this rate rise increase monthly repayments for someone on an average mortgage of $600,000, and how much extra is this a year?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Patterson for the question, and I'm not here to give individual mortgagees financial advice on how much. Well, it depends on the terms of the mortgage and the amount of the mortgage. Clearly, what I would say is that no one with a mortgage will be happy with the decision of the bank today. And just reading through the decision of the statement by the Monetary Policy Board, which I'm sure you've all read through as well, it does go to the issues that have determined or that have fed into making their decision today.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Patterson.
Thanks, President. On direct relevance, the question was about how much more someone on an average mortgage will pay. If the minister doesn't know, she should just say so.
Thank you, Senator Patterson. The minister is being relevant. Senator Wong.
Yeah. Of her answer.
Order. Order. Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Well, that wasn't what I said, Senator Cash, but anyway. On the issue of the bank and their decision today, and my quick reading of this as it's come into question time is that a lot of the concerns of the bank in making this decision have related to private demand growing more quickly than expected. And, that's why the decision this government's taken about how we can provide cost of living help to households, much of which you've opposed, whether it be in Medicare, whether it be in cutting student debt, whether it be in tripling the bulk billing rate, whether it be in some of the energy rebates which have come off now. This has been our entire strategy to manage some of the inflation challenge and provide cost of living help to households to help them deal with some of that cost of living pressure that they've been under. That is the strategy that we came to government and inflation was running at 6% and accelerating, and it's the strategy that we continue to focus on as we deal with the inflation challenge across the economy.
Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. IFM Investors Chief Economist Alex Joyner said today, and I quote, "We already have fiscal policy getting looser, but it could be even looser than we expect. The fiscal guardrails have come off. Minister, if even industry super thinks you have a problem, isn't it clear that the government's arrogant and stubborn refusal to even acknowledge the problem of government spending fuelled inflation means every Australian mortgage holder and renter will today pay the price?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I also note that economists, if you got them all in a room, I think 10 economists in a room, you'd have 10 different answers. And so what I would also say back to you,
Minister, please resume your seat. Order. Senator Patterson was heard in silence, and the minister will also be heard in silence with her answer. Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Thank you. What this government has done is improved the budget by $233 billion. We've found $114 billion in savings, something that those opposite never were able to do. And your plan going into the last election was higher taxes, lower wages, bigger deficits and more debt to build those nuclear power stations. So aren't we lucky that plan wasn't pulled off?
Minister, thank you. Minister Wong.
I'd ask you to call Senator Ruston to order.
I did call Senator Ruston. There were quite a few interjections, so she may not have heard me. I repeat once again, please allow the minister to answer with silence from the chamber. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. And in the perhaps if I finish with the RBA's statement from their statement on monetary policy, where they say the near-term upward revision is driven by private demand and the contribution of public demand to year-end GDP growth has continued to ease in recent quarters as expected.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. HSBC Chief Economist Paul Bloxham said, and I quote, "The primary driver of the pickup of inflation is not strong demand. To the extent that demand is playing much of a role, it is that public demand growth has been strong due to government spending. Given the Prime Minister and the Treasurer took credit for rate cuts, do you now accept responsibility for this rate rise?"
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, on government spending, we have delivered the first back-to-back surpluses in almost 2 decades, something that the Governor herself has drawn attention to as being helpful.
Patterson.
We have returned 70% of all tax receipts to the bottom line, when you only returned around 40%. Debt is $188 billion lower in 24-25 than what was forecasted prior to the 22 election, saving $60 billion in interest costs, and we have managed to restrain average real annual spending growth to 1.7% over the 7 years to 28-29. That is the budget doing what it needs to do, responsible budget management.
Senator Ruston, that was extremely rude. You noted a football match, and if I hadn't have seen the senator on his feet, the clerk would have advised me. Senator Patterson.
Thanks, President. On direct relevance, the minister's not yet said whether the government accepts responsibility for the rate rise.
Thank you, Senator Patterson. There was more to your question than that, and the minister is being relevant. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. And so we have taken decisions in the best interests of the economy to manage the budget in a responsible way, to find savings and to make investments where we need to make those investments, in areas like health, in areas like payments
Senator
for people
Patterson.
on low income, in areas like housing, dealing with climate change.
Has expired. Senator Whittaker.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Ageing, Senator McAllister. Delivering cost of living relief and accessible quality healthcare is a key priority for the Albanese Labor government. Last week, the Prime Minister secured a historic funding deal to deliver record funding to state and territory hospitals and secure the future of the NDIS. What has the government done to deliver high-quality health services for all Australians through the National Health Reform Agreement?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President, and thank you, Senator Whittaker, for that question, because last week's agreement really matters. It means $25 billion in additional funding for our public hospital systems. It means that the Albanese Labor government will deliver 3 times more additional funding for public hospitals than under the last 5-year agreement, supporting the doctors and the nurses who are the backbone of our public health system. And it means that under this deal, delivered by the Prime Minister, Commonwealth funding for state-run hospitals will reach a record $219.6 billion in the period to 2031. So while those opposite have been entirely focused on themselves, meeting in shuttered rooms, trying to work out a way to depose first female leader, our government, the Albanese government, has been focused on delivering better health services for Australians. And that should be good news for every Australian, because it means people get the quality public health care that they need. And it also means that our government can take the next steps to secure the future of the NDIS. Our government will work with the states and territories to target annual cost increases of 5 to 6%, so that this life-changing scheme is here for the long term. And $2 billion matched by the states and territories to deliver the first phase of foundational supports, Thriving Kids. I want to pay tribute to the work done by Minister Butler and Professor Oberclay to establish that national model for Thriving Kids. And I want to assure the mums and dads and the broader disability community that we have listened to them. We will make sure that states and territories have enough time to roll this out, and the rollout will now commence on the 1st of October 2026 with full implementation by the 1st of January 2028.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whittaker, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. On this side of the chamber, we want all Australians to access high-quality care where and when they need it. How is the Albanese Labor government working to help relieve pressure on state hospital systems and delivering high-quality care for all Australians?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, we are expanding the availability of free urgent health care. There are now 122 Medicare urgent care clinics open across Australia. Australians have made 2 million visits, more than 2 million visits, to Labor's free Medicare urgent care clinics. And 1/3 of those patients are kids under the age of 15. And think about all those mums and dads who've been able to go there to get support for their children rather than to the hospital. Nearly half of the patients who attended a Medicare urgent care clinic would have used a hospital emergency department if no clinic was available. 30% of visits to Medicare urgent care clinics have taken place on weekends. 25% of patients have attended after 5 p.m. on weekdays. These clinics are filling a gap in our health system that those opposite did absolutely nothing to address.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whittaker, second supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you again, Minister. We know that delivering high-quality primary care will take pressure off local hospitals. How is the Albanese Labor government making sure that every Australian can see a GP so they don't have to go to a local hospital?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, in May last year, the Australian people voted for a government that would stand up for public health care and for the principle of universal health care, and we made that commitment to the Australian people, and we're keeping it. The Albanese Labor government has delivered the largest ever investment in the history of Medicare. And since our investment started on November 1, there are now 3,200 Medicare bulk billing practices nationwide. Over 1,200 of those clinics were previously mixed billing. It makes such a difference. It means more and more people will be able to see a GP, and fewer people will have to resort to sitting in their local emergency department. And that is what delivering for Australians actually looks like. And so while those on the other side have spent all this time entirely focused on themselves, we have been focused on the needs of the Australian people.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I'll ask that further questions be placed on notice.